Welcome to Coping Together, Mental Health Association of Central Florida's live web series dedicated to helping you develop coping strategies and wellness tools related to COVID-19, as well as talk about mental health. Coping Together was created in response to COVID-19's mandatory social distancing orders. This show seeks to learn and educate. We do not speak for any particular group. Overall, Coping Together serves as a platform through which we can demystify and unpack mental health concepts and hear from experts in the field. Please note that this show may discuss sensitive topics, including but not limited to sexual assault, suicide, and various traumas. If you find yourself feeling upset or struggling during any episode, listen to your body and pause the input. We will post related resources. Remember, it's okay to get help. So greetings. Thank you so much for joining today's episode of Coping Together. I am Charlotte Melton with the Mental Health Association of Central Florida, and it is my honor to be a part of this series, bringing the community together in a time in which we've had to take a little space. But as the title says, we are in this together and we are coping together. So I am grateful to have with me today Josh Bell from the One Orlando Alliance. He's the executive director and leader of mission. I'm so grateful to have him here for this conversation. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Charlotte. It's so good to be here. I appreciate the Mental Health Association so much. I appreciate the work that y'all have been doing for 75 years or something like that. I mean, you don't look a day over 70. No, that's a joke. But y'all's tradition of really making a difference in our community is just so beautiful. And so I'm always glad to have the chance to chat with you and to talk about what's going on.
Well, thank you so much, Josh. And it is your mental health and your wellness that gives you this youthful look as long as possible. So that's what we're here to focus on.
That's good.
If you could tell us a little bit more about the One Orlando Alliance for those that may not be familiar yet.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, One Orlando Alliance was born in the aftermath of Pulse, and it really started as an ad hoc group to respond to the needs of the moment. As we all know, if we were any part of the Pulse response, there were so many people and so many organizations that just dove in to start helping and doing good work. And as that was going, as people were focused on what they were doing, there were a few folks in the community who saw the need for greater communication and collaboration. And so there's three really key leaders in the LGBTQ plus community of Central Florida: Jennifer Foster, who became the founding executive director, Carlos Carbonell, and Paul Bryant. And those three folks kind of leveraged their personal relationships to bring everybody together for greater communication and coordination. And so that was very much an ad hoc gathering, but it really helped with people knowing, okay, this is the agency that's doing this is the agency that's doing that. Hey, this is happening. How do we respond? How do we put the pieces together? And that was the beginning. And really, crisis response, trauma response, it's a year and a half to 2 years of fairly acute care. And that was our focus for that season. And that informal group saw the need and the value in us being more formally organized. And so the One Orlando Alliance became a freestanding 501c3 in 2018. And our focus is still very much on caring for our whole community. Our geographic region is, according to our bylaws, is Orange County and the surrounding counties. So my goal and our goal as an organization is, if you're an LGBTQ plus person in our geographic region, we want to make sure that you have everything that you need to belong and thrive. We want to make sure that you're connected to services, that you find the resources that you need. We have about 40 member organizations now doing service and care and providing programs for LGBTQ plus folks. And so if you need it, there's a good chance that somebody in our network does it. And if you need it and we don't have it in our community, one of our commitments is that we would help to develop it, maybe as a program of one of our member organizations, or maybe there's a new organization that needs to be incubated. And so we are kind of the big picture group, and us bringing everybody together helps us to meet the needs of our community.
I love that so much. And Josh, it's part of why I'm so grateful we got to have you on this episode. because I have goosebumps and I'm involved. The Mental Health Association of Central Florida is a member. We are grateful to participate. And I think about the recent collaboratives and efforts you guys have taken to move individuals through the pandemic that we're experiencing, things that exist as challenges before, put in new and challenging circumstances, just evolve, and sometimes in more strenuous ways. So I really want to echo with grounding and affirmation that what Josh says is true. So we are in this together, and it's a great connection point that brings together agencies with shared missions. So I'm so grateful for your work and your role within the agency.
Thank you so much.
And you recently joined the agency, for those that didn't know, but I bet it feels like a lifetime already.
Depends on the day. On the days when I can't remember our zip code for billing purposes or something like that, I was like, I've worked here for 6 months. I should know this by now. But I came on in October. So as I mentioned, Jennifer Foster was our founding executive director, and she made a 2-year commitment. And so she saw that commitment through, and October was the end of that. And so that was when I started. It's been very different than a normal kind of onboarding season, since everything's been on Zoom. And even now, I'm just starting to meet some of our folks for the first time in person. And I'm very grateful for the vehicle of Zoom, but in person helps so much. Just getting to know each other and seeing people in less formal environments really makes a difference. And so that relationship building phase is ongoing even as we're doing our work in the community. And I'm just grateful to be here. It's a great place, and I'm grateful that I get to care for people and that I get to help our community grow stronger together. And that's a huge privilege.
Well, thank you for tipping your hat to Jennifer again. She definitely deserves it.
Never
And
do it. If I
absolutely,
had
a
more than
couple
one
more
hat,
times.
one hat. Yeah.
So, unfortunately, as you were saying, we've recently got our chance to connect, even though we've been exchanging for quite a while already. But getting in person, just the conversation's so different and dynamic. So, we got a chance to talk about things that are straining people currently.
Mm-hmm.
We are approaching the 5-year mark. And when I was talking with you, I was thinking that's where we were going to focus. But
Mm-hmm.
what we ended up talking about, which I appreciate, is those real life, everyday things that don't have to be around a year mark or a pandemic, and that are unfortunately evergreen problems that we're facing. So the context that you shared with me was individuals facing religious trauma in relation to their LGBTQ status and the way that they are able to live authentically.
Yeah, I think one of the unique realities of not our organization, but our community, is that LGBTQ plus people have to go through a coming out process, which is not, I can't think of a lot of parallels beyond our community for what that is. And so at some point, we get to a place where it's time to tell someone else, hey, this is who I am. And that may or may not align with who you thought I was before, and it may or may not align with who you think I should be. But this is who I am. And unfortunately, there are a lot of contexts and a lot of religious frameworks that are very harmful to the LGBTQ plus community, and will tell me as a gay man there's something wrong with me, and there's something that is not okay, and my understanding of my full self is actually some sort of for a long time it was classified as a mental illness. So so I know, just based on my own experience of going through kind of a conversion therapy season where I thought, if I prayed hard enough, God would change me, that I know what it's like to be in that environment where your deeply held religious beliefs seem to be completely incongruent with your understanding of yourself, right? And that is a place that even if nobody says anything to you that describes that, even if you're just going through it with your own wrestling, that's incredibly painful. And then on top of that, If you, I know people who have showed up for a church service, that they knew people who were there, and the sermon turned up being about how it's wrong and sinful to be a gay person, and it's wrong and sinful to even approve of gay people. And that is so harmful, because it's not just saying, I disagree with you about some ethereal topic like, I don't know what, my favorite color is blue, your favorite color is green. That's a silly example, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's saying there's something about you, that there's something wrong with you. And it's not just me saying it, it's actually God saying it, right? And God and this whole religious community that includes, the part of how we live together is telling each other how we're supposed to live together. And so there's so much authority in that, and there's so much of a power differential in that, that it really is, it's trauma, it's abuse, it's a violation, and it's deeply, deeply painful, because our understanding of ourselves. I'm not even a huge fan of the term sexual orientation, because people tend to think, okay, it's just about sex. But really, what we call our sexual orientation, I think of as our capacity to connect with another human being on every level. I I desire to connect with someone on every level, including physical intimacy, but it's not just that, right? But when we look at that reality and that aspect of who we are, that is, by definition, an incredibly personal thing. Deeply, deeply personal, deeply, vulnerable. And then, along with that, our connection to whatever our concept is of a higher power or spirituality, that is also, by definition, a deeply personal, intimate type thing. And really, in a lot of people's contexts, your church family or your synagogue family or your temple family or your mosque family is really very similar to your family. It's a very close relationship in a lot of situations. And to encounter in that space, in that intimate space, a rejection of a core piece of your identity, and not just a rejection, but a condemnation, that's huge. And it really, really, really hurts people. And it's just so hard to see it. It's really an awful thing.
That touches so deeply on so many points, the mental health and wellness journey that a lot of individuals are on, looking for support in your congregation, looking for
Mhm.
affirmation of self, looking for permission to feel, think, and be. And I think
Yes.
something really powerful that you touched on is that sexual identity versus your faith. In that phrasing, you're talking about how your body and your heart are not the same, and that even with the sexual orientation, there's no heart in it. If you have a
Mhm.
different sexual orientation, it's just about the physical. I thought that was really interesting in the way you phrased it. I thought, well, yeah, well, where's the love? And then you
Yeah.
talk about that whole body part, that whole system part of this is my orientation, or like finding those phrasings for it, but that the current terms can be a little restrictive in even just how we perceive that connection. It's something we talk a lot about here in your wellness journey, is finding the dissidence between your own perspective and self and those goals where you're trying to be. And as you were talking about those supports, those core things really resonate with a lot of conversations I have daily about mental health and about the way that people are viewed. It's so powerful to bring that up, Josh.
It's and I know that y'all have this framework. We can't parcel out portions of ourselves. Our mental health affects our physical health. Our emotional, awareness affects whatever our concept is of spirituality, and vice versa. Our relationships with others affect our relationships with whatever our power greater than ourselves is. It's all intertwined. And our ability to progress in a mental health journey can be significantly impacted by religious shame and trauma. Like for me as a gay man to go through a counseling journey of seeking to accept myself when my religious teachings told me that that was impossible and wrong. It makes a huge block, a huge block. And then the experience of being closeted, where we're in a space where we can't get there yet, or we're just not there yet. And I want to be very careful. I want to say if someone is in a closeted season, sometimes that's a survival mechanism. So I never tell anybody when they should or should not come out of that closet. You've got to find the support that you need and really do a lot of discerning about that process. So please don't hear this as any sort of pressure to come out if someone's not ready. And I want to name that being in that space is very often a wrestling match with yourself, and not even a wrestling match that doesn't sound painful enough. The self-inflicted wounds of fighting myself, you know, that's a trauma on its own. And then on the other side of coming out and being in a different space is learning to trust your own self, learning to listen to your heart, listen to your gut, listen to the voice of yourself speaking in a way that is trusting and in a way that is kind of integrated, you know?
Integrated gives me that safe feeling. And as you were talking about not pushing anybody into a position, especially when we're talking about trauma, you don't need to make yourself more vulnerable at a time where you're trying to find security, but building that trust in how you feel and then expanding that trust into who you feel safe sharing that with and in what contexts. We talked earlier as well, and then you mentioned coming out is an ongoing process in a business setting when you're talking to colleagues and someone wants to talk about family life or wants to talk about plans for the evening, choosing to say partner versus spouse versus a gender of that individual and thinking, do I need to explain that dynamic? It's almost like getting into a medical condition. How personal do we really need to be right now? And am I questioning where you're going to view me from? So I really appreciate that feeling of integrating it safely into your experience. And I hope people are hearing that if you've had these experiences, you're not the only one facing that vulnerability and that there is a balance of space. Something I like to touch on, because when we bring out the pain, there has to be an avenue to hope, and there are safe pockets. So if somebody has faced these kind of experiences, what would you recommend them doing or looking for, seeking to find hope and support?
Oh, sure, sure. And that, if someone's watching this, and I mean, just statistically speaking, I think someone will be in a space of having experienced religious trauma, especially in the LGBTQ plus community. And so first, I want to say that it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. You being yourself is never wrong. And so I'm sorry for the trauma that you've experienced in the journey of becoming you and living your life more fully and openly. And so I have a lot of compassion for that journey. And so if you're in that space and if you've experienced religious trauma, I would encourage you to identify some safe people that you can talk to about it. And that can be a variety of options. There's sometimes, for some people, that's a 12-step recovery community. For some people, it's a licensed therapist or mental health counselor. For some people, you may have a faith community, and there are increasing numbers of faith communities that are affirming of the LGBTQ community, which is wonderful, and we're grateful for that, and we always hope that that number will grow. But you might be in a space where the thought of talking to anyone with any sort of religious affiliation is just not an option. That's okay. It doesn't have to be something that you do. And so, but maybe it's a safe family member, maybe there's a close friend, but I would always encourage, whenever possible, not to go through it alone, because we're not alone, but it can feel isolating. So finding whether it's an individual you can share with or whether it's a safe community that you can share with, I think is incredibly important. Um, and then we're actually having an event on June 7th, and we're focusing on this. We're focusing on the impact of religious trauma on the journey of our community, and how, we don't always, we don't get the support that we deserve, and that's very painful. And until we can name it, we can't really address it. And until we address it and say this is real, we can't begin to heal. And healing is not, let me be really clear, that eventually you would go back to church or you would go back to your synagogue or your mosque. Maybe that will happen, maybe not. But healing is more about what we need as individuals, so that that is not just an open wound for us anymore. And so the June 7th event is kind of the space that we're going to be talking about that in. But whether it's that or one of the other things that I mentioned, I would encourage you to find supportive, loving, safe relationships where you can be your full self, including being safe to say, this is what happened to me. This is what I went through. And understanding that we all need support as we go on our healing journey, as we seek to be well and healthy in every area, including mentally and emotionally. And so I want people to know that they're not alone. You're not alone. And I'm grateful for the chance to let you know that.
That's, no one could say it better, Josh. I'm so grateful. In addition, and just echoing, because the more volume uplifting that communication, the better. There's that feeling of safety. And I'm hearing something that you're saying that we talk about in a lot of our wellness workshops is your network doesn't have to be huge to matter. Start with something that feels safe. Healing from trauma in a clinical setting requires that feeling of comfort, safety, and trust. So
Yeah.
don't think that you can or have to do it without that. So see that as a priority and need to heal and recover. And I love as well that you're highlighting, speak it, talk about what's happening. Don't have to bury that you're feeling this way or you've been exposed to this. Give it space, because it has happened, and give yourself the opportunity to address it. That's so powerful. In addition to the June 7th event and the things you have coming up, and an ongoing calendar, would you mention the One Orlando Alliance website for us?
Sure, yes. So the One Orlando Alliance website is just oneorlandoalliance.org. And you can find out more information about our organization. You can also find a calendar of events. We try to publish community events whenever possible. As we're going into the Pulse Remembrance season, if you're looking for a list of those events, you can go to oneorlandoalliance.org/remembering pulse. And that can give you a full calendar of events that you can participate in. A lot of them have virtual components, some of them are in person, but there's lots of ways to mark this season and remember our 49 angels. And I also would say, especially in the sense of emotional and mental wellness, we've been through a year of hell with the pandemic, and it's really weighed on all of us. It's really worn all of us out. And so as we go into trauma remembrance season, you might be in a space where you just need to disengage from some of this in a loving way and just say, I need to care for myself right now. And that's okay too. You're not disrespecting or dishonoring anyone by taking good care of yourself. So as we move through this season, I hope that you get whatever it is that you need personally.
Thank you so much for that encouragement. So if the ideas that Josh has shared inspire you and you have a connection for support, engage that. If you are feeling at a loss for that, check out the One Orlando Alliance website to find an opportunity to connect with people who are sharing that space, because you can build that network of safe connections and supports. We are so grateful to come together in this way with an episode of Coping Together. And something, Josh, that you shared with me earlier, I'd love to cap this off with: don't go where you are tolerated, go where you are celebrated.
All the time. All the time. You deserve to be celebrated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. I'm so grateful you were able to join us, and thank you all for tuning in. Please look forward to our next episode, and we are always grateful for suggestions. Help us understand what you would like to have us uplift. Leave us messages or shoot an email. We look forward to connecting, and thank you all. We're in this together.